sometimes when you edit, things arise, right? So we had an intro with Chris Lowe on this episode. The intro completely botched due to editing issues. So we are going to do an intro right now and then transition over into the episode. We had Chris Lowe, very fun episode. You're going to love this episode. Episode 256 of Pigskin Frenzy. We're ready to rock and roll. We're fired up. A very special Friday edition. Look, it's not Tuesday. It's not Thursday. It's Friday. We normally don't do 3 shows a week, but by golly, it calls for it. And when it calls for it, it calls for it. 30-plus years in the business with college football senior reporter Chris Lowe, now with On3 Sports. We are so excited and fired up to have him. We're ready for this show. I know you are. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to Pigskin Frenzy on this beautiful Friday afternoon. Thank you for joining us. I'm Joel Norris. Whether you're watching on YouTube, listening on Spotify, Podbean, or Apple, a big thank you for taking some time out of your Friday and just sit back, watch, and listen to some college football coverage presented by us. If you're watching on YouTube, subscribe to the channel, like each episode, leave comments down below. Spotify, Podbean, and Apple, all you have to do is just share around with others and follow on there as well. X and Instagram is at Pigskin_Frenzy. Follow for my wild takes. Follow to see me and give you insight on college football from me. There's also the website www.pigskinfrenzy.weebly.com for all things Pigskin Frenzy. We could not do this show without you guys. We could not be more thankful to our Lord and Savior Jesus. We give him all the praise for this, because without him, we wouldn't be landing guests like Chris Lowe. Without him, we wouldn't have you, and we're so thankful for the Lord, and we're so thankful for him. If you want to come to know him, guys, contact me on X and Instagram at Pigskin_Frenzy. It's the best decision you could ever make in your life. Jesus is our Lord and Savior, and we give him all the praise. Guys, we're transitioning into the episode. Chris Lowe, here we go. You're not going to want to miss this episode. Editing issues happen, so we apologize. But guess what? We're here. Chris Lowe, enjoy the episode. Ladies and gentlemen, we have a very special guest. He is formerly from ESPN, On3 Sports, college football senior reporter, Chris Lowe. He joins the show. We've been hyping it up for quite some time, so we're fired up. We're ready to rock and roll. Chris, how are you, man?
I'm great. Always down to talk college football as we dive into week 3, so it's good to be with you guys.
Absolutely. We're fired up. We're ready to rock and roll. Before we get into week 3 and just dive into some of the games for week 3 and just talk about, who's on upset alert, because that's a big question I want to ask you as well. Talk about what's it like being in sports media? What made you decide to pursue being a sports writer and being a college football reporter?
Well, I wasn't a good enough athlete to go on and play sports after high school. I mean, I loved it. Grew up playing ball and different sports. So, I wanted to be connected somehow, some way. I loved the camaraderie of the locker room. I still get together 40 years later with some of the guys I played high school basketball with, and I just love that part of it. I love the life lessons that sports, taught us. I didn't probably appreciate those lessons back when I was playing in high school, but boy, I do now. But I always knew that I wanted to be around it. I loved Saturday afternoons. I'm a college hoops junkie, so everything about sports appealed to me, and the competitive nature of it. And what we do now, let's be honest, is pretty competitive in how you cover sports. So there's just a lot of things that appealed to me, and it was. I'll say this: when I started out in the business, I was working my first job was in Concord, North Carolina, small little daily newspaper, that 3-man sports staff, and I had great people around me, and worked at some smaller papers in the Carolinas my first couple of years. And I wouldn't trade that experience for anything, because you learn so much. You have to do everything yourself. You go to high school football games and sit in the stands. You take calls over the phone, track scores from around the different counties, and those type of lessons and those type of experiences. Trying to find places. I know this sort of sounds like I was in the prehistoric age, but just finding places to follow your story after a game. If you're on the road somewhere, I mean, sometimes you go to the opposing coach's house. You'd stop at a hotel and ask them to use their phone in the lobby. I mean, those are experiences, honestly, that I look back on, and it made me better. It made me more resourceful, and I appreciate that time. I really do.
That's awesome. Going into being a college football reporter, sports writing, you have to have some sort of favorite articles, right? That you have written during your time. Do you have any sort of favorites that you pinpoint and say, okay, this one was, as the young kids say, it hit, or it was just a really good article. It was really good that you felt it, right? What was your favorite article that you've written, or some of them that you can pinpoint and say, okay, this is a standpoint of my career?
Honestly, most of the ones that I think about, and I try to sort of keep my eyes fixed straight ahead, looking for the next best story, are articles about people that weren't star players or coaches, off the field type things. When I was in Nashville for 10 years, I had the opportunity and had the pleasure of writing about some people that remain near and dear to my heart. Nick Trail, who was the manager on Tennessee's football team, and Nick had a disability and he got to run through the T for the first time. Mac French, who is no longer with us, who had MD and would come to the practices in a wheelchair. His grandfather would bring him, and he and Al Wilson, Tennessee's All-American linebacker, struck up a great relationship. Eric Haig, who was also a manager at Tennessee, and he was in an awful car wreck as a kid. He killed one of his brothers and left another, and his father, and left his other brother paralyzed, and how they sort of powered on as a family. And I think at ESPN, getting to know the Ergel family. Josh is now an assistant coach with UTEP and has an awesome family. His youngest daughter, Landry, she has a rare genetic mutation and was never really supposed to get out of the hospital. She had open heart surgery when she was just weeks old, and she just turned 13. And she is truly a miracle, and the way that family has been strong and been an inspiration and rally around each other. There are a lot of other ones like that, but my favorite stories have typically been ones about people that maybe people don't, your average sports fan don't know about, but are somehow, some way involved with the sports world.
It's so unique because a lot of people, when they read stories, they read game clips, recaps, highlights, stuff like that. But it seems like you're writing a lot of inspirational type stories, and some stories that a lot of people don't really know about, and sports fans don't know about. So that's pretty a unique way to approach writing, don't you think?
Well, when I was younger writing, there was a columnist in Charleston, South Carolina named Ken Berger, who was outstanding. And I remember he would always say, yeah, we're sports writers, but remember, never forget that you're writing about people. We're writing about people. I don't care if it's Nick Saban. I don't care if it's an equipment manager on a football team. I don't care if it's a family member of a football player. I don't care if it's about a group of fans, who travel all over the country to follow their team. But there's all sorts of stories out there, and it's the story behind the story that you're always, at least me, I'm always trying to sort of chase that story and write about it and do it justice. And it's changed. You know what? I know, again, it's probably hard for a lot of people in the business that are younger, such as yourself, to imagine this. But, when I first got into business, you go to a football game at 1 o'clock on Saturday, and you'd write a story about that game, and it wouldn't appear in the paper until the papers hit people's driveways the next morning at 6:30. And obviously that's, those days are long gone. The immediacy of the media, every game's on television, everybody knows everything, every highlight has been on over and over again. So you got to find ways to be a little bit more creative. You got to find ways to write about the sport and report on the sport that not everybody gets ad nauseum. And that's, it's tougher, I think, at times. I tell people breaking into the business that you got to think outside the box more so than ever, because, press conferences now there are fewer opportunities to talk to players and coaches through the week. So you've got to be able to develop stories that you can't just read anywhere else. And yes, I do like to do those kinds of stories. And even when I'm fortunate enough to sit down with a top player or a top coach in college football, you're still looking for that backstory that tells you about that person, that runs a little deeper, some insight into why Nick Saban is who he is. Why Bryce Young is who he is. Why, all these players, all these coaches, Kirby Smart, And that sometimes is difficult to do. Some guys are more guarded than others, but I do think fans in general want to know. College football fans are a unique group. They really are. You can't give them
Yeah.
enough info. They want to know about everything they can possibly know about their favorite teams, their favorite players, and their favorite coaches.
Absolutely. That's a very unique way to do it as well. So everything's adapting, it seems like. Podcast, this is the media right now, like podcasting. You said press conferences are getting fewer and fewer. So I really liked how you said that and kind of just worded that because it's just, you just got to find ways to adapt, right, in the media. So you mentioned Nick Saban. I thought that was a very, very unique name drop there because you were the one who broke his retirement story. A lot of people remember, okay, the headline, okay, Alabama, football coach Nick Saban announces retirement on ESPN. But when you see in the article, it says, as first reported by ESPN's Chris Lowe. And that was one of the ones that I took away from it. So when I got you on, I was thinking to myself, man, I'm talking to the guy that broke the news of Nick Saban's retirement. Talk about your reaction to breaking that story and how big was that in your eyes?
Well, it was just a big story, period, that Nick was retiring. I mean, he'd been the dominant force in college football for, 2 decades. 7 national titles, 6 at Alabama. I understood the magnitude of it, but there are a lot of really good reporters out there in all the different sports. And when it comes to breaking stories of that magnitude, we could sit here for hours and talk about big stories that have been broken in football and basketball and baseball. And it really just gets down to having the right relationships and knowing the people that matter and the people who know. I mean, it's important to get things first in our business, but you certainly want to get them right. And that's when you better get right, or you'll never recover from it. You never crawl out from under that hole if you report something like that and it's not 100% accurate. But, I knew he was thinking about it. I knew it was something that he and his wife, Terry, were going to discuss after the season. They had the year before, so I was sort of already chasing it and got word just as, I don't know, within an hour before he told his team it was going to happen. Now, that said, I think Nick himself was still wrestling with the fact, I'm getting ready to walk in this room and I'm getting ready to tell my players that I'm retiring. And I think we've all had times in our life when we have big decisions and you sort of like, am I really about to do this? And I think that's sort of where he was. But when I got word that he had told his team that he was retiring, that's when I reported it. And I just sat there, not thinking so much about what I had reported, but what that meant to the sport, that someone like Nick Saban was not going to be coaching anymore because he'd been so integral to the sport. And I'm sure there are a lot of fan bases, a lot of their coaches who were happy because he was gone and didn't have to deal with it anymore on Saturdays and on the recruiting trail. But it was, I'm grateful that, that I was able to break that story. But again, we could sit here for hours, and there's so many awesome reporters out there who've broken big stories in all the different sports.
So sometimes when I do this show and I, break down my recaps of the games that I cover for the week, I get chills sometimes. I get anxious before I get on here. Do you ever feel that way when breaking a big-time sports story?
Well, yeah. Go back to what I said about being competitive. I think most of us in the media are pretty competitive. So, yeah, you want to get stuff out there first. It's more important to me to get it right, get it complete, get it in the proper context. And as I've gotten older, that has become probably even more important to me because people count on us in the media. Sometimes, the media doesn't get the best name, but the worst thing that could happen to me, and I'm just speaking for myself, is for me to report something and someone say, hey, I don't know if that's true or not. I don't know if I believe that. What I hope, what I strive to be as a reporter, as a writer, is if I report something, people say, well, Chris Lowe reported this, it's got to be right. And if it's ever anything over and above that, then I'm not, I haven't done my job the right way. But yeah, I mean, you like to win quote unquote battles and reporting stuff first, but I honestly get more satisfaction. I really get more satisfaction out of writing something about somebody that sheds some light on a person, a team, a situation that maybe wasn't out there for public consumption, and something, hopefully, that inspires. I mean, there's enough negativity, there's enough darkness out there in the stuff that's in the media. I mean, all you got to do is turn on the TV every night and watch the news. So and everything's not lottie-dottie. Not everything in sports is. I mean, it's our duty when there are scandals and there are things that are going on that shouldn't be going on, and we absolutely, that's part of what we are, is to be the watchdog for the public and report those things. But man, you asked me, do I get excited? I get excited when I write something I feel like has helped somebody, has been inspirational in some way, helped somebody get through a situation, or maybe help bring light to a situation that hadn't previously been there.
It seems like you have the passion for it, and the passion is still there. There's one company that has passion, that's On3 Sports. You recently made that move to On3 Sports. Shannon Terry and what they do over there, great job, great company. Their content is wonderful, fantastic. I keep up with a lot of what they're doing over there, and they're amazing. So talk about what it was like joining On3 Sports and making that move.
Well, you mentioned Shannon Terry. I would have never done it had it not been for Shannon and his vision of what he's building, what he has built there at On3, the people that he surrounded himself with, the pros there. I mean, I'm not going to start mentioning names because he's added a ton of them, and I invariably will leave somebody out. But there's a lot of people there that are covering college sports, college football, and we're not finished. I can tell you that. We're bringing in some more people that are going to make us even stronger sooner as opposed to later. But I had worked with and against some of the people that he has there, and it made an easy decision for me. And again, what he is building and sort of what he wants to be going forward, and the opportunity that he offered me. I'll be 60 next year. It was a no-brainer. I love my time at ESPN. I was there for almost 20 years, and as I've told people, I'm grateful for everything that company did for me and my family and all the unbelievable experiences I had there. But sometimes it's just time to take on new challenges and go elsewhere, and that's what this was for me, to catch on with a company that's doing nothing. The trajectory is just headed that way the whole time. It has been, and I'm really pumped and really excited about where we go from here and the opportunity.
Let's talk about some college football, because now you're getting me fired up to talk about some college football. And obviously, college football reporter, senior college football reporter for On3 Sports here. Let's talk about the Week 3 rankings and for the AP poll. I know a lot of stuff happened during the week. We're not going to touch on what happened in the vote and all that, but is there any moves in your mind that, okay, I would have done that differently, or would you have kept some of the rankings the exact same?
I've voted before, not recently, but I voted before in the AP poll, football and basketball. I was always a part of the power rankings at ESPN. And I'll say this, as crazy as this sounds, when you're at a game on Saturday covering it, you don't see as many of the games as you'd like to. Now, as a voter, it's your duty to go back through and see who beat whom and who was dominant and how they won and where they won. I mean, that's all part of it. But I used to tell my dad, I said, I'll use a real example. I went to Clemson LSU the first week. That was a night game. You got to get to the stadium earlier, so you don't see some of the midday games. The night games, you'll see only that when you're covering. So outside of highlights and going back through and reading and maybe talking to a few people, you don't see a lot of the games. It's like coaches when they vote in their polls. They may watch tape, but they're coaching their football team. So it is a little bit of it's not a science that's exact, I guess is what I would say when you're doing a poll. As I look at this week's poll, I mean, you see it. I thought South Florida should have been ranked higher. I don't know about Florida being ranked at all, to be honest with you. Vanderbilt is another team, and Vanderbilt looked really good on the road, was dominant. in the second half against Virginia Tech, a place that's traditionally very difficult to play. So those are some of the schools that, you mentioned schools that should be ranked higher or should be ranked at all. I really like, listen, what Alex Golesh is doing at South Florida, and they got another tough game this weekend against Miami, he's going to be a hot commodity in the offseason. Someone's going to come and try to hire him. There'll be a lot of schools will try to hire him. He's an offensive guy. He was at Tennessee with Josh Heupel, called plays his last year or two there at Tennessee. There's always those types of teams that probably don't get as much love as they should. A lot of times they're a group of 5 teams. Those are some schools. I still think that LSU, what they did at Clemson, the way they played, and I was there in a hostile environment, and grant you, Ohio State beat Texas the first game of the season, but I think doing what they did on the road and being as dominant as they were on defense, and that's the thing, LSU, when they've been at their best, they've always been, elite on defense. They look like they're closer to that now. I would have LSU as my number 1 team right now in college football.
That's a scoop right there, ladies and gentlemen. Chris Lowe would have LSU number 1 in college football. And by the way, they have a team they're playing this weekend against Florida, a team coming off of a kind of a iffy loss, if you must add, to South Florida in Gainesville. Would you think going into Death Valley Saturday night, that's a Pigskin Frenzy game for this week? I picked it with Brad Crawford from CBS Sports yesterday on Thursday's episode. Do you think that Florida's in a must-win Saturday? Do you think Billy Napier is in a must-win Saturday?
Yeah, Billy was incredible the way he got his team to respond last year after such a bad loss. He never lost his locker room. They played great football down the stretch. I think this is an even more daunting challenge for him this year. 8 of their last 10 games are against ranked opponents. 5 of those games are away from the swamp. They've got to get better in a hurry. They've got to find some offense in a hurry. As I said a minute ago, they're going against an LSU defense in Baton Rouge that was, they play with their hair on fire against Clemson. It's a defense that brought in a lot of new pieces to help rush the passer. They're really good on the back end, and Harold Perkins looks to be healthy, which is a huge difference. So they got to play. Again, this is a revelation, but they got to play much, much better than they did against USF. Against a better football team, a more talented football team on the road. So yeah, I don't, I'm not one of those who kicks dirt on someone's grave. I've just never been that way. But where Billy is at this juncture in his career at Florida, there's really no reason for Florida to play as poorly and looked as anemic as they did on offense last week. Can he fix it? Yeah, Billy's a smart guy. He's a good football coach. He proved last year that he could get a team to respond after a tough start. I think they're swimming even more upstream this time to do that.
And it's a daunting schedule. Like, when you look at it, it's a daunting schedule. I mean, at LSU, at Miami, you got a bye week, then at home against Texas, and they got to go back on the road to College Station. It's just tough once you look at it. Last but not least, just to wrap everything up, who's on upset alert in week 3 in your eyes? I know you mentioned Vanderbilt. Would you think South Carolina could be a game that you would just think, okay, they could be on upset alert for week 3?
Yeah, there's about 3 that stick out to me. Vandy, I think, in Columbia, and that's a really hard place to play at Williams-Brice Stadium. But boy, I believe in what Clark Lee's done, the way he's built that program. These are 2 coaches, really, Shane Beamer at South Carolina and Clark at Vandy, who've come in and elevated those programs significantly. There's real belief among the fan bases, among the people inside both of those buildings, that those teams have a chance to be legitimate contenders. Those teams have a chance to be in the conversation for the playoff. Vanderbilt has not ever done it. South Carolina has rarely done it. Shane won 9 games last year in the regular season, which, by the way, only one other person in the last 40 years that South Carolina has done that is a guy by the name of Steve Spurrier. So that should tell you what he's done to South Carolina. But boy, they're going to have to play well because Vandy and Diego Pavia, they're not scared of anybody. They won't play with any fear. That certainly is one. I think this is Tennessee's best chance under Josh Heupel to beat Georgia. That line started about 7. It's down to 3.5 now. It's in Neyland Stadium. Heupel's teams have been much different at home. They've been on the road. But, boy, they haven't had any answers for Georgia the last few years. Georgia has just smothered them on defense. Can they find a way to sort of break out of that with Joey Aguilar looking pretty good? But I also think that's a game to watch if you're talking about upsets. And I think Arkansas and Ole Miss is another one. Ole Miss has the experience from having already played a road game in the SEC this year. They're at home this week against Arkansas. Taylor Green, to me, is probably the most underappreciated player in college football at this point. He is a dynamic quarterback. His second year as a starter, Bobby Petrino. He's a guy I think will put up huge numbers. Can they protect him against Ole Miss? I think that's key. How does Arkansas play around Taylor Green? Some receivers, can they make some plays on 50-50 balls? Can they get open? I think the other thing with Ole Miss is Austin Simmons will not be, if he plays, I think he will play. He's got an ankle injury. I don't think he'll be 100%. What percentage is he? We're going to find out. He's thrown some picks in the first game. I know they love the way he played the preseason at Ole Miss and his ability to get things done. But I think that's something to watch early in this game in the first quarter, how he moves around and how healthy he really is.
Absolutely. There's one game that came to my mind because you mentioned Arkansas and Ole Miss. That's a good point. I had, like I said, Brad Crawford on from CBS Sports and 24/7 Sports. He was talking about Arkansas and Ole Miss being an upset game. One game that I thought about, and I want to get your take on it because we're about to run out of time here, but Clemson and Georgia Tech. Does that game stick out to you a little bit? I feel like it's a pigskin game, and I picked Clemson to win, but I don't know. I would not be surprised if Georgia Tech snuck them a little bit.
Yeah, that's a good call. Brent Key I love what he's done with that program. He's brought a toughness, a blue-collar mentality, and sometimes that's an overused word, but that is how they play. And you look at their quarterback, Haynes King, he's the essence of toughness. Now, here's my fear with Haynes King is the way he plays and the way he absorbs so many blows. Can he make it through the season? He didn't play last week, which I don't blame him. I wouldn't have played him either. But he's just one of these guys. He keeps getting back up and keeps getting back up after tough hits and injuries. But, the players around him, when your quarterback's the toughest guy on the team, that's a great dynamic to have on a football team. Clemson has been, in my mind, the biggest disappointment so far. I thought they would clearly be a top 4 team. I thought they were shoo-in to be in the playoff. I felt like they would be one of the top 4 seeds in the playoff. And maybe they still are. They only played 2 games. But offensively, it's been it's just been a disaster. They haven't been very good at all on offense. And I still think their lead on defense, they got several pros in that defensive line. They need to get their receiver, Antonio Williams, back. He's their best guy. But I agree, this is a game that if they don't play a lot better than they have the first 2 weeks, Georgia Tech will get them.
Seems like a lot of people were sleeping on the ACC in general, though, too, because now the reemergence of Florida State is happening a little bit, it seems like. I mean, we don't know until Florida State, plays in a few weeks with, Miami, but they look like they're on the rise as well. So that's going to be a very interesting task if Clemson cannot, get going on offense.
Well, Florida State's a great example of what college football is now. I mean, they were 2-10 last year. They went out and they worked the portal. They brought in a lot of new guys, a lot of guys at key positions. Really a brand new football team. And I think when you go back to the Bama game, when they beat Bama by 2 touchdowns, when you're getting ready to play a team like that has totally revamped its roster, new quarter, all sorts of new players, it's sort of hard to evaluate, study, and scout a team like that. And that game against Alabama wasn't fluky. They just beat Alabama. And Gus Malzahn, this day and age of college football, coaches who are secure enough in their skin, I'm talking about head coaches, to bring in guys who have been head coaches, who are veteran guys. But for Mike Norvell to go get a Gus Malzahn and bring him in as OC, that's paid huge dividends. I mean, you look at what they did and the way they kept Alabama off balance on offense, the way they ran the football, they got wide on them. They only had to throw 14 passes in that game. 14 passes and still won by 2 games. So when I look across the country and I see coaches who bring in veteran guys on the defensive or offensive side of the ball, Mississippi State's a great example of that. Jeff Levy brought in Mike McIntyre to be an analyst on defense there in Starkville. But that is sort of the new phenomenon. Saban did it a ton. He brought in guys to be analysts, and you're seeing more guys do that. And I think that over and above the portal has helped when teams flip it the way Florida State seemingly has from last year to this year. But no, I think Miami's legit. I still wouldn't completely sleep on Clemson. I think Florida State's going to be a lot better than anybody expected. So I think all 3 of those teams still have chances to be playoff teams, and there may be somebody else that comes out of the woodwork in the ACC.
Last but not least, we'll close after this question. What game in Week 3 do you feel is a must-watch, or this could be a classic?
I think Notre Dame, Texas A&M is right there. Georgia, Tennessee, they would probably be the 2 that tie for me. I mean, Notre Dame is, they're sort of right in the same position they were last year. I mean, they lost to Northern Illinois in Week 2 and went on to play in the national title game. And here they are with a loss. And granted, they didn't lose to Northern Illinois. They lost to Miami. But they have Texas A&M, who we know, as I said, is going to be physical. They're going to line up and try to bust them in the mouth. How do they react to that? I think this is a game probably Notre Dame has to win. I think a loss again this early in the season really puts them on the outside looking in for the playoffs. So if there is such a thing as a must-win game in Week 3, this is probably it for Notre Dame. And then Georgia, Tennessee. Georgia's on this series. They've won 8 straight. Tennessee has made massive steps under Heupel. They beat Florida 2 of the last 3 years. They beat Alabama 2 of the last 3 years. They haven't been able to beat Georgia. And not only have they not been able to beat them, Georgia's beaten them pretty soundly. So this is Tennessee's chance to get over that hump. And I think if you look at it from the Georgia perspective, if they can beat Tennessee, they got a week off before Alabama rolls into Athens at a place that's been just a nightmare for everyone who's tried to play in Sanford Stadium. They would have a chance to get out of September unbeaten with 2 big wins over ranked teams.
That's both Pigskin Frenzy games. See, Chris Lowe, he probably did his homework a little bit before he got on the show. Guys, it's a joke. It's a joke. In your opinion, in those games, who wins? Notre Dame, A&M, and then Georgia, Tennessee.
Yeah, I like Notre Dame. Coming back, Marcus Freeman his team was the epitome of resiliency last year. I think they'll come back and win and hold home court serve, if you will. Until I'm a big believer, until someone does it, I want to see it. Until Tennessee can beat Georgia, I got to go with Georgia. Kirby Smart in these kind of games, nobody in the country is better at getting their team to believe that they're the underdog, that no one believes in them, than Kirby Smart. He's done it through and through and through, and I think his team will be ready. They haven't played what I would call any real competition at this point. And I don't think they certainly weren't lights out last week in their game against Austin Peay. I look for Georgia to play its best game, and Tennessee's been really, really, really hard to beat in Neyland Stadium, but I just haven't seen them being able to line up and physically beat up on Georgia, which if you're going to beat Georgia, you pretty much got to beat them at their game. Tennessee hasn't been able to do that. Until I see that happen, I have to deal with the Dogs.
Absolutely. It's almost like with Georgia and Tennessee, it's okay, you got to prove it, right? I mean, we got to believe it to see it. Prove us wrong, Tennessee kind of thing, right? So I believe Georgia's going to win the ball game. I said that yesterday. And I believe A&M will pull out an upset. I said that on Thursday's episode as well. I just think A&M, they're clicking early a little bit. I know Notre Dame's coming off of a loss, and they're entering a must-win, but I like A&M in this game for sure.
Well, that'd be massive for Mike Elko and that crowd to win at Notre Dame. They were probably in the best position of anybody as you went into late October last year in the SEC and just did not finish the season. So to be able to have a marquee win on the road like that this early in the season would be a great momentum builder for the Aggies.
It really would. Ladies and gentlemen, Chris Lowe from On3 Sports. Round of applause for him. great and wonderful guests. We are out of time. A big thank you for taking some time out of your very beautiful Friday afternoon to just sit back, watch, and listen to some college football coverage presented by us. If you're watching on YouTube, subscribe to the channel, like each episode, leave comments down below. Spotify, Podbean, Apple, just share around with others and follow on there as well. X and Instagram is at pigskin_frenzy. Follow like the pages there. You're going to get episode updates and news and highlights from across college football. We have the website www.pigskinfrenzy.weebly.com. We will be back Tuesday for a very special edition of Pigskin Frenzy. We're going to recap week 3 and go over the top Pigskin Frenzy games for week 3. Ladies and gentlemen, Chris Lowe, thank you for joining us here, and we are so excited for week 3. Until Tuesday, I'm Joel Norris. That's Chris Lowe from On3 Sports. We're signing off. For everybody out there, we're praying for you all. We love you all. As always, we're staying the course.